We're in another week of Lent, which means we're in another week at Niner United studying the amazing teachings of Jesus. Lent is a time for new creations, new possibilities, new life that Jesus offers us. And what better way to understand and to explore the newness that Jesus gives us than to sit at his feet and to explore the teachings that he teaches us. One of the most profound teachings that Jesus gives us is to be loving. And I encourage you to go to John chapter 15. It's an entire chapter in the gospel devoted to the love that God has for us. One of the things that Jesus says there in verse 16 is that we didn't choose him, but he chose us. And that's something that is particularly interesting in Jewish culture. Jesus was a rabbi. Jesus was a teacher. A rabbi is a Jewish religious leader who is a teacher. And rabbis had students. The students were called disciples, and we are called to be disciples of the great rabbi, Jesus himself. We're called to explore and to sit with Jesus. We're called to learn from his teachings and to go and do likewise. One of the best teaching experiences I ever had was being a student at Western Carolina. Western Carolina was a school that chose me because no one else did. I was a horrible high school student. I spent most of my time growing up on the beach of North Carolina, actually on the sand, the beach, relaxing, goofing off. I never took the possibility of college seriously. Of course, I had my dream schools. I wish I had gone to Duke where I could watch basketball, or even Clemson where I could be a big football fan. I even thought about going to UCLA because UCLA was on the coast of California and I could surf and I could meet people and I could, be with the stars. My top choice probably in high school was to go to the University of Miami. I don't know exactly why Miami was so appealing. I mean, it is Miami. It had a good football program at the time. And for some reason, I really wanted to go to the University of Miami. My grandparents lived in DC, so I didn't actually take out Georgetown or George Washington off the table because I thought maybe I could live with them and be in the city and go to a place like Georgetown or George Washington, two fine universities. My mom, she really wanted me to go to the University of Virginia. That was her dream school for me, but it wasn't necessarily my dream school. And of course, I wasn't the type of student to ever get in, but just like most people, I thought what it would be like if I were to go to MIT or to Harvard. These were the schools that I thought that maybe one day I could dream and I could go to, but reality set in real hard because of all the schools that I applied, Western was the only one that accepted me. I was a horrible student, and Western at least gave me a chance. And it's good probably that I went there because had I gone to the University of Miami, I wouldn't have had my wife and had the 3 kids who I love. I wouldn't probably even be at UNC Charlotte working. And so there are circumstances that actually worked out for the best. Had I not gone to Western, had I gone to Pepperdine, which is on the cliffs of the coast of California, I wouldn't be speaking with you right now. These effects and these changes that happen because Western accepted me aren't so bad. Sometimes, we have these regrets in our life, but it works out often. Maybe UNC Charlotte wasn't your first choice. Maybe UNC Charlotte's not the school that you thought you should go to. But here, look, you are here now because UNC Charlotte chose you. You wouldn't be listening to Niner United. You wouldn't be at Niner United had UNC Charlotte not chosen you. In fact, UNC Charlotte, in a sense, chose you before you chose them. You have to actually get accepted and get into college. You have to have the merits and you have to have the ability for the college to accept you, and UNC Charlotte chose you. It might have been your first choice and you're at the place you want to be, but it might have been your second or third or fourth choice. But you know what? UNC Charlotte chose you first. One of the most unique things about the rabbi nature of Jesus is that in the day that Jesus walked among us, rabbis never chose their disciples. Disciples would go out and they would shop around and they would try to study under different rabbis and to see which one fit the best. They would seek and they would choose and they would give time for the rabbi to teach them and to help them grow and learn. And then if they liked it, they would stay. If they didn't, they would go. But one of the most unique things in the Gospels is we learn that Jesus didn't operate that way. He chose his disciples. He chose them to bear fruit for a unique purpose, to make a difference in the world. And Jesus chooses us first. That is the supreme act of being loving, is to be chosen. Jesus chooses us first, and that is an act of his love. God chooses you. You know, it may not have ever been on your radar to choose to be a disciple. It may not have ever been on your radar to follow Jesus, but God somehow chose you first. And God may feel and think and ponder and reflect, but the way that we know that God is loving is through God's actions. And the first way that God chose us is through the creation, that God created us, that he created you for a unique purpose with gifts and skills to transform the world. And God also chooses you through sustaining you. God chooses to sustain you through the hard times and through the good times by God's providence, which is God providing, God's provision for you and for me. God is always choosing to provide, to be there with us, to comfort us, to hold us, to be present with us. And God chooses to redeem and forgive us, because the great liturgy of the church says that our love failed, but God's love remains steadfast. That we are broken people, yet God still chooses to forgive us and redeem us. That there are plenty of wrongs that we can do. There are plenty of toxic things that we can do in our lives to mess things up. But nonetheless, God chooses us first to stay with us, to redeem us, to forgive us, and to help us out of the ditch. God chose you first. And as the great rabbi, the great teacher, he is teaching you and me to choose others first, to be loving, to be comforting, and to pull each other out of the ditch. This is the call of the great rabbi.